Hi everyone, it's Amanda from Tailored Transformations. I'm here once again with another amazing business with the lovely Emma. I'm going to hand over to her now and she is going to introduce herself and tell us about everything she does and all about her business. Over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. It's an honor to be here doing this with you, really. So, hello, everyone. My name is Emma Jane Saunders, and I run the spiritual services known as Dragon Goddess Healings. And this is local to my area of Bude in Cornwall. And what I offer just basically simple therapies, as it were, to help bring clarity, guidance, healing, truth, and transformation to people's lives. And it's through three main services that I do that, and that is crystal healings, tarot card readings, and white witchcraft services, which includes things like blessings for yourself, for your home, for your business, spells, potions, charms, that sort of thing. Whatever floats your boat and everything, as it were, and all that. And of course, through the interview, where appropriate, I will answer any curiosity questions and do my best to answer them as honestly as I can and truthfully as I can as well. So again, thank you, Amanda, for allowing me to be here.
Thank you for coming along. Yes, so do you want to start off by telling us how you got into what it is that you're doing today?
Okay. It's quite a long story and it's kind of life encompassing in a way because it started off as a curiosity when I was a child, but it's come full circle now as an adult. So basically, um, so basically, I found my spirituality of witchcraft about 10 years ago when I moved down here to be with my now husband, Chris. And that came about when I went to a local witch shop and I had a tarot card reading, and it totally blew my mind because up until that point, I did have some belief in the magical and mystical, but I was still inherently skeptical at the same time um, until I had this tarot card reading. And just to put it in a polite sense, it changed my life. It made me believe that magic was real and that this sort of thing was real and other people did practice it without fear of repercussions, basically. But the long story short is I was about 5 or 6 years old when my maternal grandparents put on two archaeological videos from the National Geographic, The Secrets of the Titanic and Egypt Quest for Eternity. And that started off my general love of archaeology in general. But what really intrigued me about the archaeology of ancient cultures was their everyday lives, where they used magical rituals to better improve their lives, as well as the religious, cultural impacts of their spirituality and everything. That's what really, really drew me. Because even when I was that young, I had questions of why do we not worship these anymore, and why is it just one God, because I was raised Protestant. Um,
Mhm.
I was raised in a Protestant church and everything. And it made me ask, why don't we do these practices anymore? They seem pretty cool and, they bring a sense of wonder to the world and all that. And it kind of was just like in the background thing. I eventually went on to achieve a foundation degree in archaeology. And like I said, and when I moved down here to be with my husband in 2014, I was going through a bit of a depression and I just saw that there was tarot card readings available at this local shop. And I just thought, well, I've tried everything else, why the hell not? And as I said, I had it and it changed my life. I then moved on to finding a group that practiced a study group for Wicca, which eventually evolved into a local coven. And I was part of the coven for a couple of years, and then I left for personal reasons, and I've been a solitary practitioner ever since.
Fascinating. So it's all stemmed from that love of history and archaeology.
It is, yeah, and it's kind of interesting in a way because an aspect of archaeology that I really like is living archaeology. In other words, recreational archaeology, which is recreating the things to see how they worked, and people do actually reenact how the people lived to see what the it would have been like back then. And in a way, with the spirituality of witchcraft, which goes back thousands of years in archaeological tangents, it is me coming full circle and practicing archaeology in a way and seeing things from both an archaeological and spiritual perspective.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So what's the favorite part of what you do?
I actually did a little post about this the other day on Instagram. I think it's the overall, it's the happiness and joy and satisfaction in seeing how my magic affects other people and changes their lives for the better. I've had several clients come back to me with really positive results. I've had some clients come back to me, a few years later saying that, the house blessing I did for them, for example, is still working for them, and how they've evolved. And I've even had one, I think one of the really, well, I had two poignant moments where I had one client say that they had the courage to come out the broom closet themselves, and another one was a couple of years ago when I was with my friend Rebecca Burgess, and we got recognised on the street by somebody who said that
Wow.
my posts and what I shared my thoughts on with the spiritualities and everything really made her a difference to her life. And it was one of those moments where it's like, what? I've been recognized? What? Wait. Someone actually came up to me on the street, like, what? A bit of a fangirl moment, but at the same time, it was incredibly humbling, and it was really a really wonderful feeling to know that something I shared or posted, you know, made a difference. And at the end of the day, just to quote Lord of the Rings with Gandalf, it's the small acts of kindness and love that keeps the darkness at
Yeah,
bay, and can't be any more truer than that.
yeah, absolutely. And I was lucky enough to see you in action this weekend, just gone at a recent event, seeing
Yeah,
all
at
the
the
difference
Bosman
you
event.
made. Yes, and I'm sure there was a lady that came up to you that was once again another fan of yours. So yeah, absolutely. I can really see the
Mhm.
difference, and I get what you mean. Just seeing that change in people, it's just makes everything so worth
Yeah.
it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, here's a little funny thing. Whenever I do events, right, I kid you not, at the end, I'm about to let the client go, and they're like, "How much is it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot to take the money." So it
Yeah,
just shows, I don't really do it for the money. I mean, and ultimately, wanting to live a magical fantasy life, if you like, um, earning a comfortable wage and everything is ultimately what I would love to strive for and grow my business into and everything. But at the same time, and of course we'll talk about this in the later in the interview, depending on the question that comes up. There's also the balance of reality where you've got to have sometimes you've got to balance it with a part-time job or other legal sources of income that come in and everything to balance out living. One actually a quote I made. I actually made a little quote that I share on Instagram sometimes, and it basically says like, "Live your magical fantasy, but keep yourself grounded in reality." So in other words, you can go
love
airy
that.
fairy as much as you want, but just remember to keep your feet on the ground because that is what is dictating. That is what is dictating what's happening in the moment, as it were.
I like that. I do like that. That's really good. So, are there any misunderstandings or misconceptions about the work that you do?
Yes, I think the biggest misconception about me is because I use the word witch.
Okay.
And because a lot of things that I do, a lot of people would say, oh, that's very similar to light worker. It's very similar to psychics and mediums or to priestesses. You know, all are valid titles and everything. But unfortunately, as we all know and are probably aware of, the word witch, while it is gaining more popularity and more positive connotations, it still has been used for centuries as a very negative connotation against any woman that basically didn't fit the norm, especially during the medieval times when the church was, um, doing its inquisitions, and that time has usually been referred to as the burning times. And of course, if you look, there's arguments about, from an archaeological and historical point of view, about the figures of how many women were burned, but you could say at least 90% of the ones who were condemned to death through witchcraft were mostly women, but there were other targets like gay men and women, Jews, and just anybody who just fell outside the societal norm, basically.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even though witchcraft has been practiced for thousands of years, I mean, the word witch itself is actually from the Anglo-Saxon word, wiki, which translates
Okay.
to either to weave, to bend, or it means wise, like wisecraft. And the word that it said that only came in about the Anglo-Saxon period, so that's about the 10th, 11th century or so.
Yeah.
Before that, people who really practiced magic, worked with spirits to control their environment or control their destiny, were often known as necromancers or priests and priestesses, astrologers, magi, magicians. That was the sort of words that were used and everything. So the word wish, in an ironic sense, is more of a modern sort of term. But because it's been so associated with things like devil worship, which is only a Christian concept, I will emphasize that. The devil is a Christian concept, and witchcraft is a nature based practice or religion. The other thing about witchcraft as well, it's the perfect oxymoron. It can be something and it can't be something. So,
Okay.
witchcraft is often seen as being the more practical version of magic. It's not very religious or worshipping entities, but it can do
Hmm.
so. So, the craft can be practical and it cannot be practical. It can be religious, it cannot be religious. But going back to the original point, yeah, unfortunately, the negative connotations with witch, unfortunately, also with the things of throwing curses and hexes and all that jazz, unfortunately, have given, no positive reputation to the Witchcraft Society, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, like I said, there are negative connotations mainly because of the church's doing. And unfortunately, there's also another big factor to blame for that is Hollywood. You've got the Wicked Witch of the West from, of course, the Wizard of Oz. You've got, oh goodness, I've forgotten her name now. Magical Mim from the Sword and the
Yes.
Stone.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it's
I
always,
remember.
I always thought it was funny, but I always rooted for Merlin. I will admit that. And of course, you've got the modern concepts with art, with the modern retellings of like Arthur, King Arthur, with Morgan Le Fay, who
Yes.
actually, if you look back at it, she was actually a direct descendant from an Irish, I believe, or Celtic goddess. So she was
Wow.
actually a goddess figure before the tales were twisted for her to be the evil half sister of
Yes.
Merlin and the wicked witch, that wanted Arthur to fall, etc., etc., and all that. So unfortunately, a lot of these negative connotations have also come from you could say, a very patriarchal point of view,
Hmm.
because in ancient times and medieval times, most the best healers in the village was the village witch, and they were often midwives in that as well. So they knew how to help a pregnancy pass. They knew how to terminate a pregnancy with the herbs and crystals. They knew how to heal and everything. But unfortunately, with the power of the church, doctors and priests and their power creep, as it were, to dominate everything, that's when they started to spread the lies, encourage women to turn against women. Hence why, unfortunately, as a very kind friend of mine once said, there's a lot of spirituality in witchcraft, but there's also a lot of bitchcraft where, excuse my language, but where people can turn against one another for different beliefs within the system. And yeah, I could honestly go on and on and on about a lot of these connotations. And I think to round it off is that there are unfortunately some modern examples of witches not behaving very well. Now, I'm not against anybody who's obviously fighting for what they believe in and their fair cause and everything, but unfortunately, when you see examples of things like going around on TikTok and that saying that it's okay to hex and curse people who have done you wrong. And then there was, of course, there was an infamous one in the spiritual community. I believe it was like something to do with hex the president when a certain president came into power in 2016. Obviously, I'm not
Okay.
going to get any political. I'm not going to get political or anything. But basically, there were witches really encouraging anybody who wanted to do harm against these people, basically saying it's okay to harm people. And one of the fundamentals of most magical spiritual paths is that you don't do harm to others. So then when you get those kind of stories circulating on things like social media, which you know can blow out of proportion and blow out it really turn into a wildfire rumor, it is it no wonder why the word witch is often seen as a bad connotation. And I'm trying my best to show that I'm not like that with what it is I do, because the witch is what I am, and it's because I practice magic, I commune with nature and spirits and the divine. And, I'm trying to show that, there's lots of equally good fairy tale stories where there's a good witch as well as the bad witch. I mean, you only have to look again at Wizard of Oz. People think Glenda is a fairy. She's not. She's an actual witch. She's just a good witch. She chooses to be good. So, yeah, but ultimately people can make up their minds about how you are and everything. And it's sometimes, and there will be some people where it doesn't matter how much you try and explain to them, they've made up their mind, they don't like you, they don't like the fact you're using that word, end of, You can't change their mind, so I don't bother. But I do try to educate where I can, and if it helps to change people's perspectives, then that's brilliant. But yeah, like I said, it's a very, very, very vast subject. I can go on and on
Yeah.
about it, but not going to.
Am I right in thinking you've done talks and things on sort of similar topics before? I'm
Yes,
not
I
making
have.
that
I've
up, am
done
I?
talks. There's a local pagan moot, which is basically a pagan meetup, that happens once a month in Bude. And it's usually on the first Tuesday of every month. And basically, it's eclectic. So we have like people like we have druids, we have witches, we have Wiccans, we have shamans, we have light workers, holistic therapy people coming in, and they do little talks and things and demonstrations and sessions, so, for everybody to enjoy and share and be educated on. And I've done a couple of talks there. I've done one of like witchcraft about a spirituality of balance, where I talk about the light and dark aspects of witchcraft mostly. And I've also done one of witchcraft and the modern influence of social media, talking about just a few case studies we were just talking about there and
Yeah,
highlighting how it's affected the craft. And I've done talks on, of course, actual witchcraft things like, crystals and healing, pendulums. And I'm hoping to do more in the future, especially on things like dragons and tarot card and everything when I
no,
feel ready to do so.
fantastic. So there you go. You heard it, folks. You want to know any more about any of this? Reach out for her. She does do talks. Very fascinating. I love my history, and I hang on every word that Emma says. So please check her. Anyway, I'll jump back to what's so,
Thank you.
um, so if somebody wanted to start doing what you're doing now, what advice would you give them? How would they start?
Okay. I think the first couple of pieces of advice I would give to them is basically don't overwhelm yourself. Especially in witchcraft in general, there is a vast amount of topics and tangents and angles and books and podcasts and videos and opinions and experiences, to name a few, that all describe different ways of doing it.
Yeah,
So the best piece of advice I can give to you, to not be overwhelmed, is to take it slow and to go with what resonates with you. In other words, if you feel attracted to it, do some research, and when you feel your interest drift off to somewhere else, go to that. you know, just do your research as much as you can, and where possible, try and gain experience, especially if it's in terms of doing magic. Try and gain experience. Don't be afraid to do magic. And I know there is the concept of dabbling, as it were, but I don't think if you do magic with pure intention that you want to try this because you do want to see a change in your life and you want to bring something in for the better and you do it with that kind of pure heart intention, then I don't see that as dabbling. However, if you're just doing it to mess around, you want to do it as a parlor trick for friends, or you don't have that sincerity, then I would say yes, you probably are going to get a bit of a fright, if you're not prepared for what happens. I didn't dabble, but I did get a fright once when my first experience with using cards for divination happened when I was about 16. And basically, I was using just ordinary playing cards, and there was a book with like a lot of esoteric stuff in it, and it showed you how to do readings with ordinary playing cards. So I thought that looks like something really interesting. So I want to give it a try. I want to see how accurate this is. And the cards, I did a 12-month clock face spread, and the very last card was actually indicative of a grievance and loss, physical death, basically. Now, not all cards do that, but I was it frightened me because I thought, oh my God, what the heck? So I put the cards away and I never thought about it. And 6 months later, my grandpa died in that month.
Wow, okay.
So obviously looking on it now, it wasn't the cards trying to scare me, because I was only 16 at the time. Like I said, I didn't understand at that time. I didn't have a really good understanding of what it meant. The cards were just basically saying there's this possibility about to happen. We're preparing you for it. So I know now on reflection, the cards were warning me that this was going to eventually be the outcome for things. But of course, when you're 16 years old and you're just want to try something out without full understanding, it's a scary. It can be a scary thing. So it's like from experience, don't dabble. But if you've got pure heart intentions, then I don't say there's anything wrong with lighting a candle with some herbs and crystals around it and wanting, say, a change in your job or a change in your house or something. If you've done your research and you're doing it again with pure heart. I do apologize if I sound like a parrot, but it
It's
is
important,
really
yeah.
important to emphasize how important pure heart intention is for magic in general. Um, as long as you've got that intention there and you really want to make a change and you want to experience the joy and satisfaction of magic working for you, then I don't see why not. But if you are doing it to be a bit of a silly Billy, then all I can say is you will pay the consequences, and that's your karma to deal with, not anybody else's.
And yeah, so it's all about your intention and your focus. Simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Basically, magic, and you can put it in another way where magic is basically like electricity. It's a neutral source, right? And it's a neutral energy. And to quote Cassandra Latham Jones, who is a author I can recommend, she's done her own book, and her partner has done some books as well about how they live their life as village wise women in Western Cornwall. Um, the way she quoted it was, it's how you wire your circuits at the end of the day. Magic is like how you wire your circuits. You can either wire it up to boil a kettle and have a lovely cup of tea, or you can tie it up to an electric chair. And of course, if anybody has seen The Craft, the movie from 1995, the main witch who runs the shop there, I can't remember her name, unfortunately. She quotes, magic is neither black nor white. It's both, because nature is both loving and cruel at the same time. The only is in the heart, good or bad, is in the heart of the witch.
Interesting. And I suppose you could say that about a lot of things in general, really. It's what you do with
Oh yeah,
it. It's your intention behind and your focus on what it is you're trying to do. Um, you know, that says that with anything, doesn't it, really, in life?
exactly. I mean, what I'm saying, it pretty much just from my own observation, my own experiences, is not just applied in magic. It can be applied to all aspects of life, regardless of if you are spiritual or magical or not. You know, at the end of the day, you could say it's kind of a common sense approach, just being in flow with the energy of life. You don't need to believe in it, but if you go with the flow of life and you have a positive attitude about it, you usually find things tend to go a bit smoother for yourself.
Yes, yes, absolutely. As we all know from the work we've all learned about our subconscious mind and how everything works, law of attraction, law of focused attention, all of that, which obviously I've covered numerous times. So look back if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, what inspires you and motivates you about what you do?
I think it's the simplicity that magic is so natural to us. I mean, I know it sounds very cliche and cheesy to say, very Disney-esque to say as well, but I do believe that life is a miracle of magic in its own right. And I've seen miracles of love, freedom, and hope. That's what I believe in. I believe that love, freedom, and hope are the three miracles of the universe, capable of changing a really bad situation into a really, really good one.
Yeah.
And it's the simplicity of just living, as authentically as you can, and being able to do that without fear and prejudice against you. I mean, I don't deny we're all human at the end of the day. There are going to be some people who will, like I said earlier, who will never accept you, who will never change their mind about you, and you just have to accept that and move on. There's no point trying to understand why don't they like me? Why can't they understand? Because that is a deep rabbit hole, and I've been down that once before, and you do not want to go down it because it is quite a dark and depressing place. Or my version of magic, it helps me to have some control over my life in a way that's on my terms, but at the same time, it's also being in flow with the tune of nature, the seasons, with myself and my higher self, your intuition, your heart. And again, like I said, it's very Disney-esque. It's very Disney-esque to say this, but your heart is often seen as the soul center in a lot of practices. And it's like if you live from the heart, which is full of love, it's full of hope, it's full of freedom, then it's hard to put. It's actually kind of hard to put into words, but it's just that feeling of being free and living life the way you want it on your terms, knowing that, of course, knowing that you're not harming anybody else in the process of doing so. But, I mean, sometimes just simply sitting out in the garden, holding hands with my husband on a sunny day like this, for example, I mean, the sheer joy I get from it, it's such a simple act,
Hmm.
but it's a magical moment in its own right. And
Absolutely.
you could say I'm quite romantic and quite fantastical and or what's the word, idealistic, I suppose you could say as well, very idealistic in that sort of sense. But when the funny thing was, here's a funny thing: when I was younger, I used to believe the Disney films were actually real. It was just another world I hadn't seen yet. And it
Oh,
wasn't, and then I
lovely.
got and then it's like that moment when you're told Santa Claus isn't real, and then I was told the Disney films weren't real, and I was like, oh, a bit devastating for a 5, 6 year old at the time. But anyway, of course, there was understandably, bringing yourself back into reality, balancing it with the fantasy, bringing that line in and everything. But it's, some people say, life is not like a Disney movie, but I have to respectfully disagree. Sometimes you do get moments where it is like a Disney movie, and you're like, whoa, how did this happen? How did this scenario come to be? It's like I've had a fairy godmother, or, I've broken, I found my prince, and, I've had my magical apple moment, or, that's, all those kind of cliche things again. But it does. It's just the sheer joy and happiness of living authentically to yourself and being in the flow of life and magic, because like I said, life is magic in of itself. So it's just being connected to those energies and trusting what it is that's in your heart to come forward to guide you as best you can. And ultimately you're human at the end of the day, so you have the free will choice whether or not to follow that advice or not. But ultimately it comes down to what it is you choose to do and what you choose to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it is a choice. It's like you can't stop the things happening around you. You can't stop how people's attitudes are, like you were saying earlier. But what you can do is you can control how you react to them. and it's something you can work on. It's something I've had to work on with lots of different things. But once you realize that, once you know how to do that, the difference it can make, like you say, that Disney like magic moments you notice more, and you might not have done previously if you were focusing on the
Mm.
negative. So yeah, absolutely, I love that.
Yeah, because the thing is, and this is to actually quote from Walt Disney himself. He said, what was it? Growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. Because he truly
Yeah.
believed that there was no point in just aiming for children. He wanted to recapture the magic of the fairy tales for the whole family to enjoy,
Hmm.
adults as well. Because when we become adults, we do forget that childlike wonder and some of the childlike innocence.
We're all about well-being here. So tell me, what does well-being mean to you?
Well, well-being means for me is taking care of yourself overall, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. Because if you don't have those four bits in balance, which actually correspond to the four elements that I use in my magic, they actually all correspond to the elements there. The four core elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And these concepts respond to those four elements quite literally. And if the elements are always in balance and in flux as well, the thing about balance, when I say balance, I'm not meaning perfect balance because things can never be perfect. There's always a state of flow and change. I mean, one of the biggest life lessons I've learned is that life is a constant state of change. There can be stability for a time period, but every once in a while you do have to have a mighty earthquake or volcano come along and shake things up. You know, not doting on anybody who has gone through any disasters like that, but it's the thing of, that's Mother Nature for you. She can be beautiful and serene, and then other times she can be chaotic and extreme. And you can't deny that. But at the same time, it still brings in the balance. The volcano may destroy land, but it also births new land and fertilizes it for the next round of growth. Earthquakes, are devastating, but again, they reshape the land to something that might be better. In some cases, changing the terrain drastically where a new river is flowing instead, as a positive example. The same thing with your mental health and spirituality. I think the modern problems we have with mental health is a result of being so disconnected from the spirituality and the emotional side of things as well. Like we're not going to go down any modern social rabbit holes or anything, but of course there's the stigma around um,
Hmm.
men's mental health there, where men are often said to be, they have to be tough and hard. They can't show emotions, and yet male suicide is extortionately high in
Yeah.
today's society. And then you've got women, women who are trying to be career women, but they're also trying to be mothers, and they can't balance it. But
Yeah.
ultimately, at the end of the day, you really should try and focus on your own microcosm because we're so connected on social media and news and everything that the macrocosm of the world. I think for some people, it's just much. It really is. And you should really focus on your microcosm, your own space, your own world, because if you're not healthy in general, whether that's physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental, if you're not healthy in any of those areas, how are you going to help somebody else if you want to help someone else? Not being selfish per se, but it's also establishing that we shouldn't have to be giving all the time. There are times where boundaries are absolutely necessary,
Yeah.
and people should respect that. Because goodness knows how many times when I was told when I was a child and teenager to just suck it up, you'll be fine, or
Mm.
keep going. Back in my day, we just did this, and it's like, well, yeah, back in your day, this isn't your day. This is my day. Things are different. Um, I definitely do think well-being overall encapsulates everything, and it's just a common sense thing of just taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you're not physically good, you can't work. If you're not mentally good, you can't inspire new ideas. If you're not emotionally good, you're going to probably get depressed and travel down dark paths, as it were, to get that emotional high place. And then if you're not good, and if you're not good spiritually, you don't, again, with the spiritual aspect, you don't have to believe in anything. You can just have something like, you can just put it down to a positive attitude, as it were, and it doesn't have to be religious or spiritual or anything like that at all. But in a spiritual sense, if you don't have something that makes you, if you don't have something that keeps you stable and balanced, there's something to believe in. I think that's the easiest way to put it. If you don't
Yeah.
have something to believe in for the better, then you're just going to look at the world as a very cold, harsh place. Become jaded, I suppose is another way to put it. There's so many, again, it's such a vast topic. And again, I could go on many tangents and everything, but ultimately, I think to put it around about, like I said, well-being for me is just the common sense practice of just taking care of yourself in the four aspects that I've mentioned. And you could also say, again, it's like, again, to quote my quote from earlier, it's the balance of living your magical fantasy. In other words, living the life you want to live, but being grounded in your reality. In other words, accepting the fact that you might not be in a good job at the moment and you want to change that. So, work on actions that are going to help change your job. Are you going through depression? Well, go and see the doctor or a professional therapist. Take the medicines that are, good for you, that can help you fight depression. It's just common sense practice, I would say, really, ultimately. But and some people there's many different ways, both magical and scientific, um that can help. And the one thing I always say to my own clients, if they do bring up things like that, is that I say never ever disregard conventional therapies and medicines, because I'm not a trained therapist, I'm not a trained doctor or medical practitioner or anything like that. So if there's anything that I feel that they should definitely go and see to about, I'll highly recommend it and say this is, I think, is the best course of action for you. So, bringing in my moral obligation as a witch, because like wellness, well-being in general is just the balance of your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. Again, like I said, you don't have to be religious or have a spirituality. I would just think of it as something better to believe in. And of course, your emotional health as well. It's just common sense practices, practical solutions, and just the balance of them, really. I think that's all I can say about it.
Absolutely. And there are tools out there if you don't know where to start on something like looking at the balance of your life, where
Mm-hmm.
it sort of covers different aspects of your life, like on a sort of wheel, and then there's a 0 to 10, and you can give yourself like a score. And then just have a look at the different areas and see what you've scored. Now, some of them you might be quite happy, you might have scored a 2 in one area, but actually you're fine with that. But then another area, you might go, actually, I've only scored a 3 and I really want to focus on that. So it just gives you a direction of things to look at. So do have a look. There's
Mm-hmm.
loads of things online to sort of help you with sort of that, just seeing what your balance is and just doing it every so
Yeah.
often, especially if you've had a big
Yeah.
change or anything in your life.
Yeah.
Just having a look
Um,
to see where you are.
Yeah, I would say the one tool I can recommend off the bat for anybody that is, it has helped me a lot. And it may be difficult for some people to do this, but understandable. But it really is one of the best therapy tools is journaling. And journaling does not have to be 60 pages of an essay. It can be as simple as a couple of words, a couple of sentences, or even a couple of doodles if you feel like doodling. Could be a
Yeah.
mind map. However you feel you need to express your thoughts onto a physical reality, because then when you actually look at it from a perspective of looking at the bigger picture of the thoughts, then you realize, oh, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And I get that with mind maps. When I've done mind maps to try and figure out why I'm dealing with the shadow issue and all that, and then I look at the negative side of the mind map against the positives and the different aspects, it's like, actually, that part that is affecting me pretty badly is that's actually really minuscule compared to the positives I've actually gotten out on the paper here.
Yeah.
So yeah, the best therapy tool in general, I would say, is definitely journaling. I mean, us witches have our own journals, often called a book of shadows or grimoire. And I've actually got several. I've got one that I keep for my general knowledge. So if I need to quickly refer, if I'm at a client's and I need to quickly refer to what herb or crystal I might need for a situation, I've got it in there. And then I have a separate one where it's more personal, where I put all my personal thoughts and everything. And but some witches they actually do both. They do it as a they do the journal as well as their spells and their knowledge and their magic and that in the same book of shadows. But again, it's whatever resonates with you and whatever works for you. But I would
Yeah.
say overall, journaling is definitely one of the best tools to start off with.
Fantastic. And that leads me nicely onto my next question, which is what is in your wellbeing toolkit? Clearly, journaling's one of them. Is there
Okay.
anything else that you've got that you can help that's boost your wellbeing?
Well, basically, I don't know if you can see here, but right here I have actually on display. This is my personal altar. So this is where I come to do my
Wow.
magical tools and everything.
Okay.
So I'll just bring you a little closer and just angle you a little bit down so you can just see it a bit better. Can you see it okay?
Yeah, I can say that really well.
Right, so in my well-being tools, I've actually got one of these. This is my little crystal tool. So I've got a crystal healing kit. This is my mini kit that I use in my client sessions, and I also use it for events. But I've got my crystals. I've got a witch's cabinet over there that's got more crystals than that. But generally, my altar, I mean, a witch's altar is basically where the magic happens. So I've got the statues of the god and goddess, which is the main deities I work with in my magical practice. I do believe in gods and goddesses. My main deities that I work with are the Greek goddess of the moon, Selene. She's been with me ever since I was a child. I knew her name, but I didn't realize she was a goddess until I actually started to live started to study into witchcraft and Wicca. And I've got Herne the Hunter, who is a horned god of nature, but he's an um, He's not Celtic per se, but he is an English, unique English god of nature and everything. He's a very powerful protector. And Celine is connected to the moon. She's connected to dreams and magic and healing, which is why I kind of really resonate with her. But on here, we've got things like I've got the crystal ball, which is often called the little moon upon the table. And that one is made of
I love that.
selenite, which is actually a crystal named after the moon goddess Selene. So that's me kind of honoring her in that way.
Love it.
Of
Yeah.
course, I've got the classic tool, I've got the cauldron.
Brilliant.
In the cauldron, and that one is mainly used for offerings and for burning incense and doing fire rituals. And
Yeah.
cauldrons are seen to be the tool of the witch because they're a symbol of transformation. Because you can do pretty much anything with them. You can make water offerings, you can do fire rituals, like burning angry letters, for example. You can store crystals and that in there. You can burn incense, have it as an incense burner. So it's so versatile in so many different ways. I've got my tarot cards. So this is the Tarot Draconis by David Corsi. This has been my main tarot I've ever had since I started my path. It's because I love working with dragons. I've got a wand, of course. I mean,
Oh,
no
that's
witch should be
beautiful.
without a wand. And this one's a beautiful snow quartz wand with chakra stones.
I thought
And
I
I also
recognized
have a
it. Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, the crystal fell off this one. I need to repair it, but I've actually handmade a little dowel wand, and it's got like vines. It's got like vines carved on it.
Oh, wow.
So I've made that, and like I said, you don't have to get fancy tools. Just a piece of doweling or a local stick from a fallen tree. Depending on what tree lore you look for, craft it. It works just as well. Like I said, unfortunately, the little crystal fell off that one, so I need to replace it. I've also got things like this beautiful pentacle plate, which has got the moon on it.
Oh, that's stunning.
So this is
Oh,
made from resin, and I made this. I made this myself, and that's what's so wonderful about the craft. You can buy the tools if you want to, but it's just equally as fun to make them if you find them out in nature or if you use modern ways of applying it. I've also got a little moon bowl just for like offerings and to hold fires if the cauldron's being used. And this one's quite special. This is a little healing crystal stone. This is a quartz from St. Nectan's Glen. This was gifted to
Oh,
me
wow.
by somebody at a women's retreat in 2018. It was gifted to me, and it's my general healing stone. So I use it for nearly any healing situation. And if you look at Cornish witchcraft in particular, in Cornish witchcraft, the peddler woman or the village wise woman often had a single stone that was kind of a cure-all stone. They used it
Okay.
for everything. So that's kind of my cure-all, as it were.
Love
Yeah,
it.
so
And
that's the
it's local.
main, and it's local as well. Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting to be gifted that, but I was, and it's been pretty much in my practice ever since. And it's a lovely, soothing energy. You can feel the water energies, and you can feel the earthen energies, in that as well. What I like to do is I like to dip it in water, and then I just like rub it over the aura or over the afflicted area, just to help really get some get that negative juju going, to take it away and everything. But yeah, but the altar is basically where I do most of my magic. And it is basically, oops, sorry, I do apologize there. Yeah, so this is where I mainly do my magic. So where I do my spell work and everything. If you come for any sessions with me in general, it's in this room. It's a little sun room. I call it my temple room. I've got a therapy bed for, of course, to do the crystal healing, but I can easily put the bed away to make more room if I want to do dancing or energetic movements or anything for doing spell work and all that. But if you have readings or healings with me personally, and you want the full sessions, or if you want to do, or if you do workshops and talks and that, it's all done. It's all done in here, basically. This is such a lovely little room. I've had many a client come and say, "I love the energy of this room." It overlooks the garden and everything, and at the moment, I know Mother Moon is actually out. She's over there somewhere, like she's just out of the camera range, like over there. But she is over there. She is over there at the moment and everything. So and everything. So when the moon is that direction and it comes in when you're doing a moon ritual, oh my God, the you can feel the magic. That's all I can say.
Fantastic. So you've even got a special place as well as your own little toolkit there. So I like that.
Exactly, yes.
Brilliant. So is there any particular things that you do, say if you're feeling a bit sad, if it a bit down, anything in particular that you can sort of say, oh, I'd go straight to doing this.
I think one of the things I find for if I'm feeling down and I need a bit of inspiration is I actually like listening to it might be a bit controversial or weird to say this, but I love listening to ASMR or ambience videos on
Ah,
YouTube
yes.
that are
Yes.
that are witchy themed or magical themed
Oh, I didn't know they
because
did that.
yeah, it's a work of art with the right ambience and the right music. And these are long videos. They can go for an hour to 3 hours to 8 hours and more. And I'm quite content when I'm feeling down to just plop one on the TV or on my mobile. And if I've got a book that I'm happy to be reading, whether it's a fantasy book or one of my knowledge books and just read, or I might just visualize, or I'll use the music videos and that to kind of just sort of semi. It's not quite semi. It's not meditation per se, and it's not a trance either. But it's kind of that imaginative state where
Yeah.
you can just let your mind wander, and if a story plays out in your head, if your mind decides to create a visualization depending on the how the ambience and the music affects you and everything, then I just let it do that. And again, journaling. I journal as well if I'm feeling down because sometimes I can have the thoughts going in my head and I'm like, I need to get this out of my system because I can't
Yeah.
understand why it's come around. Um, and it's just nice to see those thoughts out, if you like, in the system. And other times it can just be simple as like just holding my crystal ball or working with my crystals if I feel down. Sometimes, pulling a daily tarot card is often when I do. I pull a daily tarot card. It's always nice to know what the theme of the day might be. Other times it can be just meeting up with friends, like-minded,
Yeah.
other spiritually like-minded people, and just normies, if you like. Sometimes just meeting up with other people, because human contact at the end of the day is just as important, as well as trying to do things yourself. And again, if you're in a state where it's really, really bad, definitely seek professional help where you can. I have to admit, I was incredibly lucky with my own depressions, in that I grew to understand what it is that was causing it, and how, and the simple realization of, like, no one else was really going to help me get out of this pit except myself. They could throw me all the tools they wanted, but unless I used those tools myself, I wasn't going
Yeah.
to get myself out of the pit, as it were. Making so thankfully, like, I was lucky to not have to go to doctors or take medications or anything when I went through my own depressions and all that. But and thankfully I was able to navigate that shadow work, as we call it, that shadow work, and get myself out of the funk. And I know if I feel down, I understand first and foremost that it's a phase, it will not last forever, even if it feels like it. And I understand that, sometimes if I lash out, that's because I'm definitely not feeling very, very good. But, like I said, just relaxing into something. I think relaxing and just letting things flow is probably the best way to do it, just from my own personal experience.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. You touched on this ever so slightly, but I'm sure there'll be some more that you can give us. Have you got any
Mm-hmm.
recommendation of well-being resources, whether that's books, podcasts, videos, whatever? What is
Okay.
it would you suggest to help
Yeah.
people?
Well, if you're looking to look into witchcraft, if you're looking to look into witchcraft, I can definitely recommend this book series here. So I don't know if you can see them.
Oh, yeah.
It's called the Modern Witchcraft Book of, and then it's got the title topic depending on what it is. So we've got one here for moon magic, because I'm all about working with the moon. And then you've got one for crystal magic, but there's also things like runes, how to write your grimoire or book of shadows. There's astrology, tarot. There's quite a few topics. And I won't lie, these are the kind of books I wish were around about 10, 15 years ago. It definitely would have helped. It definitely would have helped me a lot more back 10, 15 years ago, because back then, even 10, 15 years ago, even though there were more witchcraft books, um, the a lot of them are like done by classical authors in witchcraft. And these ones are different authors. So you do the best place I found them was on Amazon. So I would definitely say have a look on Amazon for these books, at least the Modern Witchcraft book of, because they are a very good series. But you've also got classic authors like Gerald Gardner, Doreen Valiante, DJ Conaway is a good one. She did things like moon
Okay.
magic and dragon magic and Celtic Wicca. Oh, excuse me, I do apologize. And of course, any crystal books by Judy Hall is an absolute classic, of course. And one author that I really like in terms of well-being and seeing things from a difference as well is Rebecca Campbell, the
Okay.
author of The New Light is Black, and she's just recently done a new book called If Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It. That's her most recent
Oh,
book, and I've just
okay.
finished it, and it is really, really good. It is a really good book. Um,
Brilliant.
so yeah, there's loads of authors that I could recommend, but I think those are some of the classic ones I can definitely at least recommend if anybody wants to start looking into what witchcraft is about, and crystal specifically, or just a feel good life book there with Rebecca Campbell. For ASMR and ambience videos, one channel I can recommend is known as The Dead of Night. It's all handmade videos there. I mean, the very first one of her videos I came across was actually a moon magic video. And it's a 3 hour long video, and it's just different slides with subtle animations of moon rituals being done. So you've got like a moon bath, and you've got things like a window altar. There's moon water being made. There's a moon garden, that sort of thing. But like I said,
Lovely.
it's she doesn't just do magic. She's done like Harry Potter-esque like ones.
Lovely.
And
Oh,
she's done like I think
singing
she's
my
done like
tongue.
gothic. Yeah, she's done like gothic vampire ones. Well, if you want, I'll send you a link for it afterwards. Like I
Thank you.
said, if you look through them, she's done seasonal ones and everything as well. Lots of them. Like I said, so that's a definitely good. That one I would say is definitely a very good channel. I would recommend right off the bat for YouTube videos because I know some people can be more visionary
Yeah.
than reading a book and everything. Um, just trying to think of anything else. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head at the moment. And all that. Probably yeah, because if I recommend anything else, it's going to be it's tied to more specific things than being kind of like general
Yeah.
overall. So yeah, I would say those would be my top recommendations. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, don't overwhelm yourself with this because it is an incredibly vast subject. Um, just start slow and just go to what you feel is right for you, basically what resonates with you at the end of the day, and ultimately just start from there. Sometimes your adventure starts in the most unlikely of places.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Emma will send me all the details of that, and there will be a slide at the end of this video with all the recommendations she's put on there, so you can check that all out and get all the resources and the fantastic books and videos that she's recommended. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So have you got any exciting projects coming up or workshops, events, anything you'd like to tell us about where we can come and see you?
I don't have anything personal in terms of events or workshops coming up and all that, but like actually organizing them or anything like that. But I am in the process of writing up some witchcraft workshops because a few people did ask me several years ago, are you going to do a witchcraft workshop and everything? And it's one of those things where it's a difficult balance trying to write workshops sometimes because you want it to be accessible to those who are new to the craft, but at the same time you want it to be substantial enough so if a veteran comes along, they learn something new at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I've got one half of it done, and that is like the basics. I call it witchcraft basics. So it's like what basic knowledges should you know about witchcraft? And then the second one is about balance. In other words, how do you incorporate it into living a magical life? Going through working with the moon cycles and the seasonal cycles, morals and ethics, which is something that's really, really important with witchcraft and that. It's just basically these are kind of like foundational points, basically. They're foundational points where you get 3 hours with me, 3 hours plus with me to go over this sort of thing, and after that, it's your choice whether or not you want to pursue it further with other people or other workshops, etc., etc. But at the moment, I'm in the middle of writing up the witchcraft ones. I've already got a crystal one, and I have a pendulum one available. And in the future, I'm thinking of doing a tarot card one as well,
Oh,
and maybe something with psychic abilities, mediumship, because I do that myself. Um, but like I said, still a bit up in the air at the moment because, like I said, it's trying to balance it in a way where it's it's enough for veterans to come in, but it's also enough for the newbies to build a foundational point on and everything. So that's in the works at the moment in terms of like adding a workshop or anything. But overall, in terms of like any events or organizations or anything like that, not at the moment. But I just hope to continue to go to other wonderful events that are being organized around Bude and Cornwall where I can and just get my name out there and promote dragon goddess healings and grow from there and eventually like I said if I make a really decent comfortable living from this then have it as a full-time job and not a part-time hobby if you see what I mean.
yeah. So it's talking gibberish now. So is which events will you be attending that people can come and see you at then? Have you got any coming up?
Well, I believe there's a market at the Bude Strand Shopping Centre on the 30 on Saturday, the 31st of May.
Okay.
And I believe there is an event in there's a field festival in Launceston on the 28th. I think that's Saturday, the 28th of June. And I believe there's also another feel good festival on the 25th of August in Bude as well. I've not been confirmed for that as of yet, but that's the current events I have happening at this moment in time. But of course,
Fantastic.
things are subject to change depending on how life goes and everything. And of course, the best way to keep up with what events I'm going to, etc., is just to check out my social media on my Facebook, on my Instagram, which is the biggest ones really. And everything. I've actually been thinking about maybe starting to invest in a website or a blog site or something like that. I'm not sure. I've tried it a couple of times before, but it always fell flat because I didn't understand really how to work it back then. But I've got a bit more experience now, so hopefully might be something like that in the future. I don't know yet. We'll wait and see. But like I said, yeah, Facebook and Instagram are basically the best ways to follow me and, see where I'm doing events or see where what services I provide or just to listen to a white witch ramble about something that's happened, a life experience or just magical correspondences, etc., and just sharing my thoughts and experiences on it at the end of the day. So, yeah,
Brilliant.
pretty much just sharing my magic where I can.
Absolutely love it. And again, everybody, there will be a slide at the end with all of Emma's contact information, socials, everything. So you can go and check that out, find her, follow her page, leave her some love. Come on, find all this wonderful information she's been passing on, and of course, where she's going to be at her next event. So that'll be great and exciting. So check that out at the end of this video. And so, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to just add or say something about before we sort of finish?
I don't think there is really. I mean, we've talked quite. I mean, I've probably topped the hind legs off the donkey at this point.
Never, never. I could listen to you all day.
And
I really
everything
could.
and everything. But yeah, I don't think I've got really anything to add. But I think the only like closing remarks I can say about everything is that magic is real at the end of the day. Like I said, life is a miracle of magic in of its own right. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe in magic. But just accepting that life is it's a beautiful energy to live in general. And,
Yeah.
just live according to your authenticity, to your own beliefs and everything. Be kind to others, help, show compassion where possible. And yeah, and don't be afraid to stand up for boundaries or calling out on any BS that you encounter at the end of the day, because if you don't stand up for yourself in that sense and help to stand up for others where you can, it's like the world doesn't need more of that. We need more people shining their light and being kind at the end of the day. I think that's the most important thing. A little bit of love, compassion, and understanding, honestly, a bit of education, etc. It makes a world of difference.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We can all make mistakes. Don't ever beat yourself up if you make a mistake. Just pick yourself up, try again, and keep going. It's all you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. At the end of the day, every mistake is just a lesson in disguise, isn't it? So that's all
Exactly.
we need. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for all the wonderful information that you've given us, the resources that you've shared. And as I say, everybody, please go and check out Emma. She's amazing. I saw her in action on the weekend, and yeah, she knocked me out. It was just brilliant and such wonderful experiences for everybody involved. So please go check her out, say hi, leave her some love, and I'll see you all later. And again, thank you, Emma, and Dragon Goddess Healings. Go check her
Right. Thank you very
out.
much,
Thank you.
Amanda. Been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.